everybody. It's 9:30 p.m. on the East Coast, 6:30 p.m. on the West Coast on a Monday. It must mean it's time for your Calamity Jane live stream that occurs weekly. I forgot the weekly part. I had to weave that in at the end. Yeah, no, exactly. This has sort of become the game, right? This is our opening bit. Some people, have Andy Richter and McMahon. Yeah, well, not intentionally. I just screw up and then we make a bit out of how I screwed up this week.
It was fine. You were humming along and worked out well. So it's all good.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Your placation is exactly what I want. I know you're just placating me, James.
That's what I'm here for. That's the reason why I'm here, pretty much to help out massage the intro. Good job.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. You're doing all the secondary animation on my
Yeah.
You're my booster. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. No complaints. Really? How are you?
I am doing fine, putting my dog on the ground because she doesn't know if she wants to be in my lap or on the ground, but otherwise I am doing fine. Had a good weekend, hung out with a lot of friends, low-key, just doing my favorite thing in the world to do, which is talk. You know me. Believe it or not, I really just like talking. I don't know. I really love the sound of my own voice. As long as it's in my head and I'm not hearing it back through a speaker or something, because then I go, oh God, who is that person talking and why are they talking to me?
I'm the same way. I feel like I'm pretty sure I'm 100% sure I sound like a Muppet, and when I hear my voice back, I can't stand it, but whatever.
Yeah.
Here we are, so I can torture myself forever if I ever want to go back and watch our streams and watch me talk.
Oh no, I know. When I'm working on stuff, I've done a couple of, I did a thing early last year. It was a play that we, recorded, right? And I was the editor on it. So I was going through and editing, and having to listen to myself talk was just, painful. It was so painful,
yeah.
James. It was so painful.
Yeah, I've been there. I hear you on that. Even when we're doing, even on our Calamity Jane stuff, sometimes we'll do scratch track type of stuff, or we'll put it in our voice and stuff. I can't stand my voice and some of this stuff,
Yeah.
So, for example, I think I do the voice for Leon, and I can't stand my voice for Uncle Leon, but, what do you do? We need something in there for a scratch track.
Right, I know. I did the voice for Clem, and I want to go back and redo it. I just, it's interesting, that one. Okay, great. So I've got the transition moment for me to go off and rant about something else. When I did that scratch recording for the animatic, it was before. This is how long we've been working on this project, everyone. It was before I had discovered improv. This was in
really?
Yeah,
wow.
2016, early 2017.
That's when we did the scratch track, though?
That's when we started doing it, yeah.
Oh, my God.
No, it was even before that, because I recorded that voice when I still owned that house. So it had to be in 2014 or something like that.
No.
No, there's no way. That can't be right.
No, that can't be right. That can't be.
My memory is... Anyway, it was before I started doing improv.
Mm-hmm.
God, we're turning into old men. So you remember when we used to wear onions on our belt? But then I discovered improv, and obviously I've been doing that for quite some time now. And when I re-listened to, that voice of Clem, I go, oh, I know what I did wrong. I just didn't commit to the character, right? The problem with my delivery in that is I didn't have the commitment, right? I wasn't. I was kind of trying to keep my voice down because I didn't want to wake up my ex-wife or neighbors or wherever I was living at the time, and so I wasn't leaning into the performance. I wasn't committing to Clem, and so when I listen to it now, I'm like, oh, I know how I could redo this where it wouldn't be nearly as awful. I mean, it'd still be awful because it's my voice, but it wouldn't be nearly as awful as when I did it before, and it's because I've had that performance training now.
Huh. Yeah, I did. I mean, again, I think you're beating yourself up over a scratch track. Yeah, but I did like your take on Clem. I thought it felt like the right personality for it.
Mm-hmm.
As far as kind of the even keel, kind of no non-emotive
Mm-hmm.
character, because that's kind of what he is. So, and it's funny because like as you said, you were transitioning. I was going to transition as well for tonight's
Oh my
work
God,
tonight.
this
So,
is we're just full of train. This is better than a late night talk show
yeah,
host
yeah.
or a
So,
podcaster.
so I might as well go share screen and we can keep talking. But
Okay.
I was actually going to go with Clem tonight. I had him ready
Boom.
to go, um,
Look at that.
and I was going to start putting him into the animatic. His actual the asset we talked about. I don't know last year.
Yeah.
But it's kind of funny now. I kind of am curious. I do have some of the scratch track here a little bit.
Oh
Let's
no.
listen
Oh,
for
you're
fun.
you're a horrible person.
I know I am, but let's just listen for fun
Okay.
anyway, since
All
we're on this
right.
topic.
Okay.
Okay, so in this scene, Calamity walks by him um, to enter the bar. Okay, so here's the rough sketch. So she's gonna
Mm-hmm.
walk into the bar.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll play it through. Okay, da,
Oh, I didn't. I don't. Oh, you did. I didn't hear it on my end. Hold on. I got to
Oh,
change
okay,
the.
okay, okay.
I got to change the. Oh, you need to unshare your screen,
Uh-huh.
reshare it, and then make sure you share audio as well. That's a
All
weird
right,
Zoom
will
idiosyncrasy
do.
that it doesn't by default share audio when they
Oh
share.
yeah, I see it there on the lower left. Okay,
Yeah.
here we go.
Okay.
All right. Starting. No, I got to put in my password because I'm on a Mac, and so they're
Oh,
really
really?
about security on letting me share. Oh, here we
Okay.
go.
All right.
All right. Now I got it. Okay. All right. So these. I don't know if you see these little prompts I just had there with
No,
messages,
I'm
but
not
they're
seeing. I'm
gone
not
now.
seeing the prompts. I'm just seeing. I'm just seeing just your default screen. So.
Okay. Great. All right. So okay. So yeah, she looks back and forth, and she's gonna enter the bar. So we'll play from here. Okay. Yep. She approaches.
Mitchell, you got a customer. See, it's my only line, and I'm
You're not happy with
still
that?
hypercritical of it.
Oh man, I thought
Yeah.
it was pretty decent. I think there's a little bit more here. I mean, we'll play through it. There's a lot of dust in this sequence because we have some finished art,
Mm-hmm.
some not so finished art. Should we turn on Jeff's voice for Mitchell? I can turn it on or off.
Sure, go ahead, turn it on.
Let's, okay, let's go back a
Let's
little
let's hear a
bit.
little bit of Mr. Jeffrey's dulcet tones.
All right, so she approaches the bar and then quickly pair. Turn on the switch. What? And then so
Mm-hmm.
some of this is here, some of this is not here. So we got to get some of this audio back in there.
Yeah,
Now
there's
your
been
host
some
Christian,
there's
what's
been
going?
some rewrites.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you. No, you're all too much. What are you having?
A sarsaparilla, please.
Sarsaparilla? Most folks around these parts only drink whiskey. 3 X's.
Where's that laughing coming from?
It's his laugh track. Oh, that's right. I had one other line of dialogue. Yeah.
Yes, you
Yeah,
did.
that's
Now
right.
the original, like we were gonna replace it with. It's always got an audience, but let's hear the original here. I
Okay.
think there's a way I can do that for fun.
Oh wow.
So let's ignore that. So
It's his laugh track. He brings it with him everywhere. Oh, that's right. We changed it. Yeah.
yeah, we
Wow,
changed
this
that
is yeah,
line.
because before he used to the original version he just had like a little amp speaker combo attached to his belt and he like had a button that he pressed and so the laugh track was just always emanating from the speaker
Yeah,
that was on his belt and we
yeah,
changed it because
yes,
we think it's funnier that he actually just has speakers mounted everywhere in town and it's like A, who let him do this, B, how did he do this, and C, why isn't anybody dismantling any of this? Like just the
yeah,
questions are a
yeah,
lot more silly when
yeah,
you think about it that way. So yeah.
yeah. So yeah, so I mean, yeah. So there you go, Eric. You can revisit some of your old voice acting chops a little bit. I actually thought this is again. I had no issue with your. I thought your original stuff was
Where's
great.
that coming from?
Yeah, I mean
It's his laugh.
it's just a scratch track, so right, it doesn't really
Yeah,
it's just going to get cut when we go into final production, but
But
Yeah.
like I said, the way you emote for that, it's kind of what we want for the character anyway. I mean,
Yeah.
that's how I felt about it. So they did the job.
Yeah, I mean, he's
Um,
supposed to be a contrast to Mitchell in a certain extent, right? Clem
yeah,
he's sort of, I guess you could call him world weary, but we don't really know. The audience doesn't really know anything um, about that. He's
mhm,
sort of, I wouldn't say that he's cynical, or I'd say he's grumpy, but I don't
mhm,
think he's particularly cynical, right? Would you agree with me
yeah,
there?
yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's one of these characters that kind of evolve as we go. But
Yeah.
yeah, I'm kind of with you. Like, I don't know what his angle is just yet. Like, does he hate the world? I don't know if he does or not. I think he's indifferent
I
to
think
the world.
indifference to the world is the right way to go.
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
he's seen enough to know that there's really, he's just going to he's got to do him, because the world's not going to give him anything, right? And
hmm
he's come full circle on that, and he wants to play solitaire in the prickly pear for some reason. Um,
yeah, yeah,
but the
yeah.
thing is, at least when I'm writing Clem, one of the things that is always in the back of my mind is, as the show goes on, he'll complain about Mitchell a lot, right?
hmm hmm
But he never leaves the prickly pear. He never finds a different place to play solitaire, right? And so I'm
Yeah,
always writing it from the standpoint that Mitchell is actually kind of Clem's best friend, right? Um,
yeah. Just by proximity, because he's just there all the time.
I don't know. I don't know if it's a proximity thing, because there's other people in Dry Gulch Gorge. He chooses to come back to
hmm
the prickly pear every day.
hmm
I
Sure.
think I think he sees something in Mitchell's, um, not naivete, but his almost like, um, Moby Dickish obsession with making people laugh. I think potentially, perhaps Clem sees that as someone who is, ever hopeful, and he is not anymore. I mean, whether he's
hmm
jaded or bitter or cynical or indifferent, the fact of the matter is this is a guy who has, for the most part, lost his sense of humor. Right?
hmm
He sort of resigned himself to a quieter life, and
hmm
he's come to terms with it. But it doesn't make him a happier person for it. It just makes him aware that the world is what it is, and that's it. Um,
hmm
and I think potentially he sees in Mitchell some of that. Maybe some people would call it naivete, but for Clem, he sees a little bit of that hope springs eternal passion that he no longer has, or maybe he never had it. Right? We've not really
hmm
gone into it too much, but um, yeah. So when I'm writing Clem, it's always with that. He's sort of a contrast to Mitchell Winchester. He's
hmm
he's the yang to Mitchell's yin a little bit, right?
Yeah. Um, and that I think that's good. To have a character like that there in the in his juice bar, because yeah, like you were saying, it does give a nice juxtaposition to. It really does amplify how zany Mitchell can be. Um, with him always kind of there as a steady beat of of indifference,
Right,
as Mitchell does his antics. Yeah.
right,
So,
exactly. And in my mind, and obviously this is just currently, and who knows what happens if we keep working on this for a million years, and we turn into The Simpsons, and it stops being a show about The Simpsons and more about the town of Springfield. Maybe
yeah.
that happens with. Sorry, swallow some spit. Maybe that happens a little bit with Calamity Jane,
hmm
and we run out of stories to tell Calamity, and it becomes more of a story of the town of Dry Gulch Gorge. Who knows, right? The sky is the limit. But at least for now, my intention is always to, generally speaking, keep Clem more of a foil for Mitchell,
hmm hmm
than kind of a marquee player, right?
Yeah. So wait, so that are you saying that you want to see Clem kind of diffuse many of Mitchell's jokes, or does Mitchell just throw a bunch of things at him, and because Clem is like a brick wall, it just makes Mitchell go crazier and crazier to to do jokes, or does he give up? Has he given up and he's burned out with Clem, but he still just tries with everybody else? Like,
It
no,
could be all of those things, right? The
yeah.
point is to give Mitchell something to play off of, because his relationship with Calamity is going to grow and it's going to change, because that's the intention, right? Calamity is the protagonist of the show, but Mitchell is probably the second main character, in all honesty. And so his relationship with Calamity is going to grow as she learns who she is as a hero. He's also going to discover things about himself, right? I mean, we won't talk about it here because it kind of spoils the game, but we've written a huge backstory for Mitchell, just like we have for Calamity. We know what his arc is. We know where he comes from. We know why he is the way that he is, right? And he, like Calamity, will grow into his purpose, just like she's growing into her purpose. The difference is that their journey is vastly different. The path that they take to get to their purpose is different, right? Calamity's is a hero's journey, right? She's growing in to be this figure who is a leader and who has strength and who, is going to change the world. Whereas Mitchell's path is more about fulfilling his own sense of self, figuring out how best he can serve himself. So his is more of an internal journey, in terms of how he grows. And that's not to say that Calamity doesn't grow internally as well, because she does. But I'm just saying that Calamity's growth affects the world much more than Mitchell's growth will affect the world, right? His is purely a journey of self, whereas Calamity's is a much, much broader experience. But suffice it to say that he does grow and he does change. And so we already have that relationship dynamic with him. And so if we brought Clem in and he also had this large, huge purpose, then it starts getting a little bit muddled. Now, again, if we're doing this for 30 seasons, then who are going to grow and change will change in the show as well. But at least right now, in my mind, Clem is more of just something that Mitchell can play off of, something that can be a springboard into silliness. Someone, like you said, maybe Mitchell is frustrated with Clem because he never laughs. Maybe Mitchell just drives him to be more passionate to make Clem laugh. Maybe, Clem can be all of those things, as long as it is serving Mitchell, right?
Yeah.
And at least that is his main purpose in my mind.
Yeah. It'll be. Yeah, it is kind of funny how we worked on this, and we have all kinds of weird side stories for a lot of these characters. It just sort of just naturally evolves that way as we stare at them, or we're just talking about them, or I'm doodling them, and we're just sort of like, when we just hang out and we're just doing our thing, But yeah, Clem definitely has, as you were saying, Mitchell's probably has the most backstory to a lot of other stuff going on with him, but the other ones they've got layers as well. They've got little onion peel layers for us to kind of look at as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's really the goal, right? I mean, even the smallest characters, you want to know, at least at a superficial level, why they're doing what they're doing, right? Whether it's as simple as they just really like this sports team, so they're very passionate about sports, right?
Yeah.
Or just something far more complicated like Calamity's origin stories. But yeah, I mean, it's also fun to create all that backstory, to create these worlds, and it's the world is a much more, it's a more it's, sorry, my brain is just mashed potatoes today for some reason.
Yeah, good. Well, it happens sometimes, especially on a Monday.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
But when you take the time to create these layers for all of your characters, it makes the world more complete. It makes the world more real. And I know, our protagonist is a human-sized salamander, but it's interesting that is far less important than the commitment to the reality that you're creating, right? I mean, I think any cartoon is basically proof of that. I mean, no one really questions that the Simpsons are human beings, even though they don't really look like human beings, quite frankly. They look,
No, they all have jaundice pretty much.
right. They all have jaundiced and bizarre bug eyes and horrible overbites, and
Yeah, but that's the beauty of art, is the abstraction of humans, and as long as they act human, that's all we need. We just need enough to help sell it.
Yeah, and it's the consistency of the world that they're building is what makes a show work. I mean, they kind of lost us a little bit, but it's still ultimately a show about people and the town of Springfield. And over the years, it's gotten a little bit sillier and a little bit broader. I mean, Conan O'Brien definitely had a lot to do with that, with the Conan or Homer Goes to College episode and the monorail episode, and other writers have left their mark too. For instance, when Homer goes back into space and or goes into space.
Oh gosh, yeah. Yeah.
And but really, like when Matt Groening originally created the show, for him it was very important to create this sort of flexible reality, right? Like they weren't making Family Matters, they weren't making Full House, they weren't making I go right to the ABC shows, the Cosby Show or Growing Pains, or any of those. God, the number of family sitcoms, 2.5 Men, My Two Dads. Yeah. Why are there so many?
Cool.
Anyway,
yeah.
So they had, because it was a cartoon, they weren't anchored in the physical reality of reality, and so what he wanted to create was a kind of flexible reality. Obviously, the Simpsons, they couldn't. In the early days, they've gotten a lot more sloppy with this nowadays, but in the early days, Homer was never going to cut off Bart's hand and reattach it, and everything would be fine, right? That was outside of the realm of the flexible reality that they were creating, right? Mm-hmm. They weren't going to kill a character and then miraculously they were going to come back to life, right?
Yeah.
So I think that it's a good rule that you establish the rules of your world, and as long as you stay true to them, no one is going to question whether your protagonist is a human-sized salamander or not, right?
Yeah.
It's all about maintaining consistency and honoring the rules that the audience is expecting to have be followed.
Yeah, 100% with you there, and I think as long as we have our characters kind of fleshed in our minds, and it's reflected in the writing and with the animation and the storytelling, I think we'll be in good shape. I mean, it's kind of the bottom line. Yeah, I mean, Simpsons is definitely it's almost getting to a point now where, yeah, I don't know. I mean, are they the victim of their own success because now the characters are so hardwired with how they are? They're like, they'll never be able to, quote unquote, grow. I mean, it is kind of, you think about it, like Homer going out to space. They had to really come up with a pretty corny idea just to get him to go up to space, But yeah, the characters are pretty much. Bart's still in what grade is he in? 5th grade, 7th, 6th grade? I don't know.
I think it's elementary school. I don't remember for sure though.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, The Simpsons debuted in '89.
Yeah, I think it was '89. Tracy Ullman Show or something like that.
Yeah, well, I mean, the Tracy Ullman Show I think was '88 or '87 when they were doing all those shorts. But the actual Simpsons I think was '89.
The show itself, yeah.
And so it's been on for 25 years, almost 30 years, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's crazy.
So yeah, I mean, Bart is, I think, a little older than me. Actually, Bart is in his 40s now. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
Because I was 8 when The Simpsons premiered.
Wow.
Yeah, it's weird to think.
But that's the thing with animation that's kind of interesting, and I guess comic books too. Well, sort of it with comic books, but is you're kind of, when you design these characters, like, do they don't, because time isn't isn't a big factor anymore, they can pretty much stay in this arrested developmental stage of just they'll always be a teenager. But this is a question that we can pose for ourselves though. Is Calamity going to grow? Is she going to get older? To a point where, I mean, even in Spider-Man, it took them like 30 years to finally get him to go to college and get married and stuff like that. I think that's a good example.
Right, and Dick Grayson eventually became Nightwing and moved on, and
yeah,
it does change from time to time, but it doesn't have to.
Yeah, that's the fun part about animation, because you could be as fantastical as you want with it. But also, again, it's sort of like, it's kind of a weird curse to me too. I mean, that's just my take on it. I just find it like you can't really, once you have the characters kind of set, you don't want to. It just feels like they never change. At that point, but Flintstone never changed. He's always the same. Just goes bowling, and then there's some sort of weird scenario of the week that they got to deal with.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think part of it is an economics thing, right? I mean, you don't want to redesign these characters that everybody is familiar with. I mean, with human beings, you don't have a choice. They're going to get older. They're going to change.
Yep.
There's nothing you can do about that. But you don't have that issue when it comes to animated cartoons, because as long as the voice actor is healthy, right, the quality of their voice will change over time. But generally speaking, it's good enough for government work. I mean, it's interesting to go back and listen to, just sticking with The Simpsons here a little bit, early episodes of The Simpsons and modern episodes, and seeing how the voice quality has changed over the years, and how different some of the characters sounded originally versus how they sound now.
Do you think that's because the actors just got older, or do you think they just actually kind of honed the character a little bit and they kind of just adjusted it?
I think it's a little of column A, a little of column B. I think in the early days, in the first 5 or 6 seasons of The Simpsons, as Hank Azaria, Dan Castellaneta, and Yeardley Smith only does Lisa for the most part, right? And oh shoot, I'm so frustrated. I can't remember the voice actor who does Marge and her sisters. Nancy Cartwright does Bart, obviously. But she does a ton of the children male characters, right? Male and female children characters. But in the early days, I suspect it was because they were honing the voices, like kind of finding that sweet spot, right? Nowadays, I think the change is more. I think they are starting to get older. I mean, this is a show that's been on for 30 years. I mean, singers are, it's pretty classic too, right? Like singers, if you listen to Bob Dylan or Paul McCartney now versus when they were in their 20s and 30s, they don't even sound alike anymore, right? In fact, maybe this is heretical of me to say, but I actually think Paul McCartney's voice is completely gone. I can't listen to his music anymore.
Oh, really?
Yeah, his newest album, McCartney 3, his voice is so, in my opinion, so gone. He's lost his voice completely. That I don't enjoy listening to his music anymore.
Oh no. I'm not a big. This is I'm gonna be raked over the coals for this. I think I've admitted this to you before, but I'm not a huge Beatles fan. I will listen to the music, but I know it's like it's a world religion to everybody except for me. I live in my cave, and I think they're great. I think they're fine. But I wouldn't be able to tell you, like, unless I really listened to them over and over again, if Paul McCartney's voice has gone downhill or not.
No, I will be mailing you a pair of scissors. Please use them to cut your tongue out when they arrive at your house.
I know. I get it. I'm not the first person that's wanted to mail me pairs of scissors for saying that. That's for sure.
I do love the Beatles. I am one of those guys. There's something eminently listenable about their music. There's something very timeless about their music.
Yeah.
Sure. And everybody has different ones. Some people it's the Stones. That's why there's that old cliche: "Are you a Stones guy or a Beatles guy. My mother.
Really? Like, there's a versus thing for
Oh
those two?
yeah, oh yeah. I mean,
Wow, interesting.
Quentin Tarantino even joked about it in Pulp Fiction when he asked, or I can't remember which direction it went. It was the scene where John Travolta was meeting Uma Thurman's character,
Uh-huh.
and they were just introduction questions, right? And
Mhm.
it's just like either or questions. And one of the questions that came up was Beatles or the Stones, right?
Yeah.
It is interesting though that doesn't work as well as it used to. I mean, I'm finding that even people of my age,
Mhm.
um, the taste in music has changed, rightfully so. I mean, the Stones are still producing music to a certain extent, and Paul McCartney is, but their prime, honestly, was, 40, 50 years ago, right? I mean,
Mhm.
the
Mhm.
Beatles stopped producing music in 1970, for God's sake. And
Yeah. Yeah.
the Stones' best albums were in that time frame, too.
Mm.
Um, and so I have friends who are like, Beatles or the Stones. I want to listen to Beyonce, right?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
and rightfully so. It's not like a judgment or anything like that. It's just interesting
Mhm.
though. As I continue to get older, even my contemporaries are starting to move away from these sort of
Yeah.
classic rock bands, right?
Mhm.
And then
Yeah.
obviously people younger than me. I have friends who are in their 20s. I mean, some of them have heard of the Beatles.
Oh, they haven't really. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I haven't really. So for me, like, yeah, I do like my bands. I'm sort of a kind of metalhead. I like, for example, Motorhead or
Mm-hmm.
AC/DC, those type of guys. Metallica. I like those kind of bands. Didn't really gravitate towards Beatles as much, but again, I appreciate them from afar. Rolling Stones was too relaxed for me
Mm.
in my youth, I guess. I
That's
mean,
an
they're
interesting
okay.
word, but I like it. I think I get the vibe that you're trying to represent there. Yeah.
Yeah. So and then, and then here's where it's the same. Like AC/DC, they're definitely. I mean, I think at this point I haven't followed them 100% lately, but I know that a couple of their band members have died off. I mean, they're really
Yeah.
down to a few left because they're just aging and they're getting older.
Yeah.
And I keep wondering, like, man, are they still performing live? And how can they do that at that age with all the anger that they throw out there? Like, how do they
Yeah.
do it? So some of these bands, if they were doing their stuff in the prime of their lives within their youth, so they can stay in energy. But now there's no way. So again, so back to Paul McCartney, same thing. It's like, even he had to belt out with some energy on some of that stuff, and it kind of takes a toll. So
Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
he's still got, from what I've heard, I've never seen him in concert, but he's still got like just a ton of energy on stage, and he's still a
Mm-hmm.
consummate musician.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But it just he can't sing the way he used to, and honestly, to my ears, it just I don't like listening to him anymore.
That's kind of a bummer.
Yeah, I mean,
So
it's it's an interesting, it's a really interesting thing, and this is a whole other conversation. We've already been going for over 30 minutes at this point, but um, uh, it's interesting to me how much of our popular culture was so consumed by baby boomers, and
yeah. Mm-hmm.
now that they are they're dying off, right?
Yep.
And so this our popular culture is changing more rapidly than it has in a very long time,
Mm-hmm.
because popular culture was so dominated by baby boomers, and for so long,
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of crazy.
Yeah, and I guess that'll just keep going as we move on. I mean,
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
yeah, it's interesting too. I'm watching a show, and we'll wrap it up at some point, but called The Kaminsky Method. Maybe you've
Mm-hmm.
heard of it.
Mm-hmm.
Michael Douglas,
Yeah.
Alan
You're telling
Arkin.
me about this. Yeah, it's on
It's
HBO Max or
it's
something,
on
right?
Netflix actually.
Okay.
Chuck
All right.
Lorre actually, and it's very different than what I'm used to from Chuck Lorre. I mean, when I think of Chuck Lorre these days, I think of things like Two and a Half Men, Big Bang
Yeah.
Theory,
Yeah. Yeah.
just four camera comedies, just that are mindless and base, and
Yeah. Yeah.
they're just
Isn't he
not
the
funny at all.
Yeah, The Big Bang Theory is like, oh no, like
Yeah.
he had, yeah. I mean, yeah. But anyways, yeah. You're saying Kaminsky method, huh?
The Kaminski Method stars Michael Douglas and Alan Arkin, and it is, in my opinion. Oh, I'm sorry. You got some. Might want to
Yeah,
turn
there
off
was a
the
little bit
audio
of a
tracks.
blurble
Yeah.
thing. Yeah, I got to turn off. Yeah.
Um.
All right.
Uh. I get the sense that it's a commentary, a semi-autobiographical commentary on Chuck Lorre turning into an old man, right?
Huh.
Because the whole show is about aging men, right?
Okay. Yeah.
You know, I'm in season 2 now, and now Paul Reiser's on the show, and he's great. It's so weird that Paul Reiser disappeared for so long, and now all of a
Yeah.
sudden he like turns in stellar performances in Stranger Things, The Boys.
Yeah.
He's in the Kaminsky Method, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's crazy to me because he's so good, and you watch, it's like, why did Paul Reiser leave? Like, I don't understand. I like Paul Reiser.
I see. I couldn't stand Mad About You. I
Yeah.
hated that show with him and Helen Hunt, and so I was always annoyed with Paul Reiser. And then when I saw his name show up in other stuff, I was like, oh, this guy
Yeah.
again. But I actually like anything else outside of Mad About You is terrific. They even rebooted Mad About You a couple of years ago with them.
That went right under my radar.
Yeah, well, for good reason. It's a terrible show before and still a lousy show now,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
It was on TV forever, so obviously people liked it. Somebody out there liked it. I never understood it. It was just some random couple in New York. Like, I didn't understand what the point of the show was to watch them over and over again. But anyways, but yeah, after he did like his Stranger Things stuff and the Boys stuff, everything he's done outside of it, he's terrific. He's
Yeah.
great, you know?
Yeah, no, I agree. But it's you know, the the fact is like he's getting older too, and I actually don't know how old Chuck Lorre is.
Uh-huh.
I'm checking right now. 52. Okay, so he's 70 years old. He'll be 70 years old this year.
Okay.
So yeah, and the show is about a 70-year-old acting coach and his 80-year-old agent friend, right? So this is absolutely, a commentary on his getting older and what that's like for him. I mean, there's entire storylines about prostate cancer, right?
Jeez.
But it's good.
Wow.
I mean, it's like, I don't usually like Chuck Lorre's stuff, but I really, really am enjoying the show. And I think it's only 3 seasons. It's a relatively show. I think there's only like 20 episodes total, so it's quick to go through, and they're only half hours.
Mm-hmm.
But it's you watch it and you go, this is a show that will have no meaning to anybody in 10 years, 20 years at most, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because all of the people who it's really for, they're going to be dead, And I don't know, it's just so interesting because the baby boomer generation was so big so fast. They're all going to basically die off at around the same time too, and it's just going to leave this massive gap in culture in general. Because
but didn't they already, they kind of made their mark on culture already, and now it's kind of moved on from them, right?
I don't know that it really totally has. I mean, they're not retiring. Most actors and look at Paul McCartney. I think he just turned 80 and he's still touring, right? The Stones are still touring. Chuck Lorre is still making television featuring actors that are his age. Michael Douglas is actually 70. I think Alan Arkin is actually 80. And they're not retiring. They're not fading off into the shadows. I mean, a few do. Sean Connery, who was actually like an older generation, but he retired, and Jack Nicholson retired. But baby boomers, I don't know, like the cultural creators and politicians, they don't retire for the most part,
Yeah, they're still around. But I mean, if you were to go on HBO Max, how many boomer shows do you see versus, it's always skewed towards youth.
It is, yeah. He is. You're right. I mean, he's Alan Arkin is almost 90 years old, right?
Yeah, and how many? Yeah, and that's the thing. I just think they'll always be there. And they won't retire. But if the eyeballs aren't interested in watching old people on screens, it's just part of our deal.
Yeah, no, totally.
We're
It's
not
just that.
gonna.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
We're gonna be relevant. Yeah, we're just gonna be relevant no matter what. Like even, for us, at least for us growing up. Like for example, Three's Company. Don Knotts didn't retire. He worked till he
Yeah,
passed away.
that's true.
He was Mr. Furley, and so he became not the central character like he was in Andy Griffith or a main secondary character. He eventually became a third tier as some that would come in, do his kind of shit and leave. But it was really about the core three roommates, right? I mean, and I know it's a perfect example of older generation kind of going to the side, and we still see that hasn't changed. We're always going to see these prime actors, back in their day, and then they'll eventually kind of let the way open for the younger kids to start doing stuff. That's kind of how I see it. But
I guess maybe I should revise. The same people I was listening to as a child and watching on TV as a child are basically still doing, and they're still major focuses, right? I mean, they're still major players. The only reason Bruce Willis retired was because he has that horrible disease, right?
Sorry, what did he have? I didn't even know that.
He had some disease where he's losing his ability to understand speech. And speak. Yeah, I know, it's awful. It's this weird form of dementia. And apparently, like his last couple of movies, he actually had to have an earpiece because he couldn't read anymore, and people would feed him the lines. And
oh man, it's tragic.
Yeah, it is. It's tragic. But I've been watching Bruce Willis since Moonlighting in the 80s, right? Yeah. I mean, and they're all gonna die off so quickly. There's not going to be the Don Knotts who takes on a diminished role in his twilight years. They're just all going to disappear because none of them are. I mean, I don't know.
Side roles.
I don't know what I'm saying, but
yeah, I think so. I mean, no matter what, there's always going to be roles for people that are older people that are aging, etc.
Well, I'm just saying I don't know that there's going to be actors to fill those roles, right? Because all of the boomers are dying off at the same time.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. You're saying it's almost like a weird, really lame version of Infinity War, Avengers Infinity War, where the stage snap and then they're all gone.
All the old boomers are dying away.
Oh man, this is a very dark way of putting it,
but yeah, I mean, you know what I'm saying, right? Like, it's just crazy to me the rate at which public figures, it doesn't have to be celebrities, just any public figure of that generation, the rate that they're dying off at this point is crazy.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's true. I guess we'll see that eventually in our media at some point.
Yeah, and the funny thing is too is it's like Leonardo DiCaprio is not getting any younger. Brad Pitt turned 60 this year. Right.
Wow, he looks great for 60.
Yeah, he does. So it's just the Gen Xers are getting up there in years too, right? And
yeah, I mean, I'm a Gen Xer. I feel like I'm getting up there.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm an Xennial, so I'm right at the cusp. But
yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're Peter in both boats.
Yeah. But it's just an interesting, I don't know, and maybe it's just me getting old, I guess. The shows that, maybe it's just the shows that I watch are feature, the reason I'm still seeing shows with those actors that I grew up with is because that's what I'm interested in pursuing, right?
Because you're familiar with those faces, too,
right?
Right. And so there's familiarity, so you want to see what they're doing. Yeah, I get it.
So maybe there's that, and maybe no one watched the Kaminski Method, which is why it only got 3 seasons, and
yeah,
and so people are like, who is Chuck Lorre, right? Who's Michael Douglas? Who's Alan Arkin, right? It's like, you've never seen Catch-22? Come on, man.
Yeah.
Although it's interesting, the show's about those two characters, but they've got like a cavalcade of amazing actors, all in their older actors. Anne Margaret's in it. Jane Seymour's in it. Elliot Gould shows up in one episode. And it's crazy because a lot of these people actually don't work that much anymore. Kathleen Turner is a character in the show. it's just really it's interesting, because I had forgotten that all these actors were around, and then they're all showing up in the Kaminski Method, and I think it's Chuck Lorre's swan song to the end of the boomer generation of television.
Mm-hmm. It could very well be. But then on the flip side, it's kind of funny because to me, Larry David represents that boomer generation
Oh,
too.
big time. Yeah.
And he's still, and he's bigger now than he ever was. I feel like he's bigger now than he ever was Seinfeld because he was behind the camera before.
Yeah.
And then like when he got Curb Your Enthusiasm, now he's become more. I feel like he's more relevant than Jerry Seinfeld is.
I mean, Seinfeld does still do stand-up, but yeah, I mean, Seinfeld hasn't tried to go back into television since Seinfeld ended, actually.
Yeah. And then, again, my opinion, but watching a stand-up, it just didn't have the same. It's one of those scenarios where the TV show was better than, I think, his content on stage. I think he was.
Well, and was this what you mean, like for all time, or his stand-up after the show ended?
Post Seinfeld. Anytime I've seen him try to do something post Seinfeld, I guess he set the bar so high for himself that he can never top that. That's unfair for me as a viewer / fan, I guess. But
it's also
Larry
possible.
David, he was like, he was hilarious. Like,
It's also possible that your tastes have changed, because my mother, he just apparently did a new stand-up special, and my mother was telling me it was the funniest thing she's ever seen. Right?
Have you watched it yourself?
No, I haven't seen it, so I can't comment. Okay. But I know that if she watched like Kid Glorious and Radio City, or whatever John Mulaney's most recent, I think that wasn't the most recent one, I think that was one ago, she would watch it and go, I don't get it. Like, I know for certain that she would hate John Mulaney's shtick, right? But John Mulaney is straight up millennial. He's 40, just like, he's my age, a little bit younger than me, but not by much. So it's just a completely different generational thing, and I think John Mulaney is one of the best comedic storytellers out there right now, right?
Yeah. I think he's funny too. I like his content too. I think he's really funny too. But even age doesn't matter. I mean, I don't know. Sometimes things are universally funny because I found a lot of older comedians hilarious, like that around my generation. The classic boomer who's now passed away, Don Rickles.
Rickles was a great insult comic, yeah.
It didn't matter. He just was so funny. Even as a kid, I would laugh at his stuff. It didn't matter,
I think
some comedians are they can just transcend age. It doesn't matter.
And I think a lot of it is that they're not topical, right? I mean, Seinfeld's comedy has always been topical.
Yeah.
And it's possible that we are just not in that same milieu anymore, in terms of the topics that he's covering. And again, I haven't seen the special. Maybe it is God's gift to stand-up comedy. I don't know, but it is an interesting. I think we're heading into an interesting massive generational paradigm shift.
Yeah, definitely. I hear you there. It sounds foreboding and kind of sad, but it needs to be spoken out into the universe a little bit.
Yeah. Well,
for sure.
To end on that dour note, why don't we take a look at where we're at, and we'll wrap things up for the night, because we're coming in on 50 minutes here.
Yeah. So I mean, as we've been talking, you can see me I set up already a basic animation for Mitchell, and so now he's going to be playing solitaire here. I'll do more details with this card playing here later. But we have all the assets here, and then I borrowed those assets, and we kind of fill in the gaps now, in a couple of different shots here. So I'll put in the shots here later. There he is there he is here. And, he's pretty much a stage prop for this section of scenes. But, he won't be talking like this. He won't be going, ma, 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 ma. He won't be doing that.
I don't remember. Have you done a mouth pack for Mitchell yet? Or Clem yet?
I don't. No, I have not. I don't think. I mean, I think we just did a basic. That was it.
Yeah.
I think there's a little bit here, and I'll probably add a couple more mouth packs to him. He won't be nearly as extensive as Calamity as our main actress in the show, but yeah, he'll get his mouth back soon enough. Maybe I'll do that next week. I'll start filling in his mouth, with different poses of drawings. So
cool. Very cool. Well, it was a freewheeling conversation today. We didn't stick on one topic for too long, moved around a lot. Love that we opened on discussing character backstories and ended on the generational paradigm shift that is bearing down upon all of us.
Yeah.
Speaking of old, did you know like the average age of a congressperson is 65?
Yeah, I did actually.
It's insanity.
They've had 9 grip for a long time. It's time for younger gens to get in there. But yeah,
Anywho,
that's a whole other.
and we're already approaching an hour here, so we'll wrap it up. But yeah, for anybody who's watching this after the fact, don't forget we are live. We'd love to see you hop in on the stream and chat with us. We're always happy to deflect and change gears. We don't have a script here. But, you can always catch our show after the fact. We post it on YouTube, obviously. And you can also find a link to the streams on our Patreon website, which you can find at calamitygene.rocks. It'll take you right there. Please consider becoming a subscriber and helping us make this thing a reality. We also are infrequently on Facebook because we are old people. And neither one of us are huge fans of social media. And also check out Jane Salamander on Twitter. We do a 3-tweet story every week. We're in the middle of a multi-week storyline right now. So go check Twitter and take a look-see at what we're doing over there. But otherwise, have a good night, everybody. Stay safe, and we will see you next weekend. All right.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody. Bye.